Hello and welcome. I'm Chris Braitch, and this is the Seen and Heard podcast, a conversational series. I am an emotional health and leadership coach and co-founder of the not-for-profit Seen and Heard, which supports those seeking healing, connection, and systemic change. My vision is to move myself and the world around me towards connection and compassion. And each week, I will connect with amazing guests who are on their journey to bring about meaningful change in their own lives and the world around them. Thanks for being here. Let's get started. Welcome everybody to the Seen and Heard podcast, a conversational series. I have the great joy today to have been joined by Joanna Povall. Joanna has over 30 years of leadership experience in education across the UK, France and the UAE. Alongside her role as a school principal, she works internationally as a lead improvement partner for the Council of British International Schools, supporting school improvement and leadership development around the world. She has awarded TES International School Principal of the Year 2024-2025. Joanna is also the author of Kind Leadership, Leading Schools with Empathy, Honesty and Impact, which is something we'll be talking about today. Her CHASE framework, outlined in the book, was shortlisted for the TES International Schools Staff Wellbeing Initiative of 2025 and reflects her commitment to compassionate leadership. Welcome, Joanna.
Thank you so much, Chris. It's lovely to be here.
Yeah, it's wonderful to connect. We've had some lovely conversations over the last sort of 2-3 weeks since we were introduced. Your publisher, Crown House, got in touch about your brilliant book. Given what I do for my work with Compassionate Leaders Global, I was like, yes, we must talk. So thanks for sparing the time.
It's a pleasure. I think we're two peas in a pod. I think that's what we discovered about each other.
Yeah, it was great. Even when we were just chatting, you were saying how you prepared to do the podcast, some breathing and things like that, and I was like, yes, this is good stuff. So it's what leaders need, taking moments of space.
Definitely.
But yeah, I love on the podcast always to hear a little bit about how it was for someone, their formative years growing up, what the experiences that shaped you in the work you do. So yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about that? Anything that really comes to mind?
Yeah, I grew up in Durham City with my mum and dad, and I have to be really honest, I have to credit them with this. In my house, kindness, fairness, looking out for other people, it was just a non-negotiable. My parents are really pro everything. They are not at all, there's no room for any comments about racism or any discrimination in the house that I grew up in. And I've realised as I've got older that really, it formed me, and that not everybody has that in their household. I just assumed everybody was the same, but apparently not. And then something that really sticks in my mind that really illustrates this was when I was about 7 years old, I went to the cinema with my granddad, and my grandparents were the same, and we went to see The Water Babies. And in The Water Babies, there's a character, I watched the film and then obviously I read the book afterwards, and there's a character called Mrs. Do As You Would Be Done By. And I turned to my grandfather and I said to him, "That's a funny name, Mrs. Do As You Would Be Done By." And he said, no, it's not a real name. It means treat other people how you would want them to treat you. And that's what you should do. And it really, really stuck with me that's what you should do in life. And so from a very, very young age, my upbringing was, you treat everybody with respect. You are not better than anybody else. Nobody's better than you. We're all human. And I think I'm very lucky in that regard.
Oh, thank you for sharing. That's beautiful. Just the thought of you, cinema, granddad. I love that. And your parents as well being sort of, well, I guess what we would consider open-minded, liberal and open-hearted. And actually, even the thought of it for me is so alien. It's
Really?
so different from how I grew up, how many of the people I work with grew up, whether that be in their family of origin or boarding schools, care system, etc. So it's really wonderful to share that. I love that. I can really connect with it. And so with an open-minded view in a world that's not really so geared up for that. I mean, growing up in Britain in 70s, 80s, 90s, I don't remember it being very open-minded.
No.
So how was it when your upbringing met the world, if you like?
I would say it gave me a lot of confidence, because I really did believe that nobody was better than me and I wasn't better than anybody else. And I did have things, I would say, that happened when I was growing up that were people being mean. And I honestly, very naively, didn't really think that it was bullying. You know, I remember when I was little, please don't laugh, I was incredibly skinny. And it didn't matter what I ate, I couldn't put weight on. I was just a really skinny kid. And I used to get shouted at because I'd walk down the corridors at school and the teachers would go, "Pull your socks up, girl." And I'd pull my socks up and then walk and they'd just go back down again because the elastic wouldn't stay up. And of course, 1980s, I went through school with people going, "Oh, Joanna, she's Ethiopian," you know, when Band-Aid came out, laughing. And I just sat there going, "No, I'm not." Just carried on with my day. And it really didn't impact me because of my upbringing. And then I would say probably hit the age of 11 or 12 and reality that, so primary school I just blustered through and didn't really think of anything. And then probably from about the 11 or 12 years old, probably when your hormones kick in, it really started to change and I started to feel it and it started to get a little bit nastier. And I would say that was the point as well where in primary school, you're just a little kid and you've got a teacher. And I think that there's a saying which I dispute because I am a secondary school teacher. There is a saying that's quite common that primary school teachers love children and secondary school teachers love their subject. I love my subject and children. But I think I would say if I look at my secondary education, that was what started to happen. And I didn't, and I started to see the difference. I became acutely aware of the atmosphere in the classroom if I maybe wasn't very good at maths and how the maths teacher was getting frustrated at me. And I think that changed how I felt. And I always tell the same story, so I have to apologise about my life being ruined by my art teacher. I don't know if you heard this one.
No, you carry on.
Well, when I was in primary, all I ever wanted to be was an artist. If you looked at my primary school books, I would draw all over. I would doodle everywhere. In every single corner, you would find a silly drawing. I used to drive the teachers mad, probably. And then my first week of secondary school in art, I thought this was going to be my best lesson and it was going to be absolutely great. And I was drawing 1980s again, drawing a shoe because you had to put a trainer in the middle of it. I'm not sure art's moved. Did you have to do that?
Well, kids are doing it now. Yeah, in secondary school. Yeah, it's good to see they've updated the curriculum.
There you go. The curriculum. This is 1980. I won't say, but yeah, that's what we were doing then. And I drew what I thought was the world's best trainer. And the art teacher came up behind me and said, "Oh, that's an unusual surname." And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Is your dad called Wilf?" And I said, "Yeah." And he went, "Oh my goodness, you know, your dad's an artist. I know your dad's work. He went to a particular art college." And he said, "Your dad must know Ridley Scott because he went to art college then." And I said, yeah. Well, of course, all of my new friends, because it's year 7 in the UK and it's different catchment areas, they're going, "Oh, Joanna's dad, he knows Ridley Scott." And it was all Alien and Blade Runner at the time. So my ego was going through the roof. And then the teacher turned and he looked at my work and he said, "You don't take after your father, do you?" And I think at that point, I promise I put the pencil down and I've never drawn again. And it made me aware. He actually helped me because I don't think I'm probably that good an artist. I wouldn't know, I've never tried. But it made me so aware of how your words impact somebody as a teacher. So now, as I've grown up and I'm dealing with people as a leader, not necessarily a teacher, every single interaction that you have with somebody has an impact.
Thank you for sharing that. The tears came straight away. It was just that's just heartbreaking, and thank you for sharing it, because I think everybody watching this will connect to the moment that they realise that, you know, a teacher or a parent just shot them down in flames on something that was really kind of, they really loved and really into, and it changed the course of their life. And a lot of the emotional healing work and coaching I do with clients now, we are going back and recovering the younger self from those moments. And I've been doing one recently with a client exactly that, of, you know, the creativity was crushed out of them in one episode in class, and you have to, you know, go and recover that. And once it's home, it starts flowing again. The art, the words start coming again. It's beautiful, but yeah, really heartbreaking. Thank you for sharing.
And I think also for me, I do a lot of work talking in schools and speaking at conferences, and I always use that story. So maybe some people who are listening, I apologise, you'll have heard me say it, But every single time I go to a school and I tell that story, I say to people, as I'm saying this to you, can you just think about your own experiences? And at the end of it, I say to everybody, can you just put your hand up? You don't have to share. I'm not asking you to share anything. Could you please just put your hand up for my research? Just let me know. Did you have an experience like that that has affected your life? And I swear every single time, every single person in the room puts their hand up.
It's remarkable, isn't it? Yeah, no, I can absolutely believe that. I also think, I've got a lot of teachers in my life, in my world, in my work, and always remembering the ones that had the positive impact as well. Absolutely game changing impact. Some of the teachers I've had in my life. I mean, at one point, one was basically a surrogate father in boarding school, and he was a good and honest man. And if it were not for him, I don't know where I'd be. But yeah, the words hurt, words have impact. So thank you for sharing that. And also, you brought something up there around that is so different. And I've just my kids at time of recording this are on their way to 15 years old, secondary school, GCSEs, all that. Primary school was pretty nice for them. Just went to the local primary school. They all sort of got on. Anything that came up was largely, very manageable, etc. And then they're dumped into a shark tank of a 1,500 child school, secondary school that's up the league tables, the local sort of grammar school, all that. And it's a really brutal environment.
Yeah.
It's an all girls school, which I don't love. It just happens to be the local one, which means some of that, the teen kind of like a lot of the bitchiness and the harsh friendship stuff's coming out. At the same time, it's very academic and da da da. So I'm watching the sort of the light dim in their eyes, and now they don't like school. They don't want to go to school,
Oh, that's
and it
breaking my
breaks my heart.
heart.
Yeah, it breaks my heart, and unfortunately, I see that a lot in people around me. So, what's your take on that?
I think it's really sad, and I think find the adult that notices you. And the thing that I say to people is, we're all different. We're all different people. We all like different things. I always say, even with me, so in the UAE, we have the same regulations as you have in the UK. You have a designated safeguarding lead, and I feel really strongly about this. We've got 4, and the reason why we have 4 is, I always say, they might not like me. They might not like my vice principal. They might not like the head of primary, the people who, so we've trained up 4 different people so that if they go and they're thinking, I've got a problem, I need to go and speak to somebody, they're not looking at that photo on the board that says, here's the designated safeguarding lead, and thinking, I don't want to go and talk to that person. They've got a choice. And I think it's find your people that you get on with and speak to them.
Oh, very powerful. That gives me something to talk about on the school run later if they've had another tough day. But thank you, Joanna. And
There'll be somebody there, I promise. There'll be somebody there who will care for them and will really look after them. They just need to find who that person is.
Find the tribe.
Yeah.
It's very powerful. But thank you. And just coming back to you then. So secondary school, different experience. You started to sort of feel the impacts of the world a little bit more, but coming from a really sort of securely attached home with these wonderful sort of open-minded, heart-centered views. What came next for you? How did you take that crushing sort of defeat with the art side of things? What did it sort of move you on to doing and focusing on?
It made me more humanities based, I would say, and languages. So English, French. I had a phenomenal French teacher who really was just one of those dream teachers. He tried every single lesson, was really interactive. He was fantastic, cared. And I think I always say to people, children have a sixth sense. Your children will tell you this. I think we grow out of it as we grow older. I'm telling you now, students come to me sometimes, they may be 6, 7 years old, and they'll go, that teacher doesn't like me. And I go, no, teachers like everybody. That's their job. And then I hear the teacher in the staff room and I'm going, yeah, they don't. Kids can tell. And I think I had a French teacher, I had an English teacher, a religious studies teacher who really took me under their wing and told me, oh, I've noticed you. you're really good at this subject. And I think that's what children need. And it really encouraged me, and I went down that direction. But it still makes me laugh because we had two things happen again that made my life go in a different direction. When I was in what's now year 9, it would have been third year seniors then. We had a careers. We were given first year of GCSE. We were given a book that just had about, I don't know, 1,000 careers in it, and the kind of GCSE you might need to do this career. And I saw psychiatrist, and I thought, oh, quite fancy that. So I went, they brought this lady in from the council. I sat down and she said, so what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, I'd like to be a psychiatrist. And she said, and this is exactly what happened. She said, are you good at science? And I said, no. And she went, oh, well, you can't. You need a medical degree to be a psychiatrist. You can't do a medical degree if you're not good at science. Choose something else. Bye. And that was my careers advice.
Oh.
No, have you thought about counselling? Have you thought about psychology? Nothing at all. That was it. Then the next thing that I thought about doing was maybe I'd join the police. And I thought, I think I'd be quite a good policewoman. I think I could do this. And the police came to school. We had like a series of sort of careers talk. And the policeman stood up in front of a bunch of 14-year-olds and said, as a police constable, I'm telling you now, the number one thing you're going to have to do in your job is tell a member of their family that they've died. You're going to have to knock on the door, tell them they've been killed in a road traffic accident. That's your job as a policeman. If you don't think you'll be able to do that, don't do it. I was 14 and I just went, oh no, I don't think I'd be able to do that. But what makes me smile, but it's not smiling, many years later in my job, I had to tell a little boy that his dad had died. The mum came to school and said, I can't do it. You're going to have to tell my son. I could do it. It was heart-wrenching, but I did do it. And I say to people sometimes, I'm not a psychiatrist and I'm not a policewoman, but sometimes I feel like I am in my job. But again, it wasn't that I was pushed in a different direction. It was just somebody going, no, to a very impressionable 14-year-old girl. So it just went like this.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's such. Thank you for sharing that, Joanna. It's such a stark contrast to what you're getting at home, probably, which is
Yeah.
the world's your oyster. There's no, I was.
Yeah.
It took me till I was 40 something to do some emotional healing work and really figure I have no superiors, I have no subordinates, I have only brothers and sisters, if you like, people I many I haven't met yet. But that didn't land until recently. Before, I grew up in a family that was like this, and in a boarding school. The pecking order was harsh, the hierarchy was harsh. Absolutely, everybody, even if they were a month older than you, was better than you. Anyone younger was lower. Anyone who was better at sport or academics was above. So you just constantly seeing this pecking order and working out where you are in it. So yeah, but to have so many doors closed in your face like that, I think my career's thing was exactly the same. I can remember sitting in the office at 14, 15 at the school I was at. And very stiff upper lip sort of school, and I was given 3 options. So I could be in the military, I could be in the chaplaincy, so going to the church, military, church, or business, because I didn't have the connections or the IQ to be a politician.
Oh.
So given that the boarding school system was set up really to fill basically the banks, the smart people with the banks and the politicians and things like that. Then the sort of the ones who, struggled a bit more in military. So yeah, there's a good background for you there. I remember thinking, well, I don't want to do any of those, and so I fell into the only one left, which was the business thing, because I thought, well, yes, that's what I ended up doing. But God, of all the wonderful things in the world, if anyone had said counselling or whatever, might have ended up where I am now. 30 years later.
Do you know what's really interesting is the school that I went to was the polar opposite of you, but in a funny way. And I have to tell you this story. I went to school in Durham, obviously, and a lot of the people who went to school that I went to, when we were doing our A-levels, it was people whose parents worked in the university, but for, I don't know how to put this politely, maybe political reasons, for the reasons of, their belief system, they didn't want their children to go to a private school. So we were sent a letter home, but honestly, you're going to think I'm making this up. We were sent a letter home when I was in sixth form that said, please, we've had a complaint. Please, could you tell us how to address your parents? Is it professor and professor, professor and doctor, doctor and professor, doctor and doctor, doctor and Mrs., Mr. and doctor, or Mr. and Mrs. I was the only person in the class whose parents were Mr. and Mrs. And somebody, I still remember it to this day, went mad because his dad, it was Mr. and his mum was doctor, but his dad was actually a surgeon. He was a consultant. So somebody laughed and went, your dad's Mr. and your mum's doctor. And he went, my father's a consultant surgeon, thank you very much. And he got really upset by it. But I was just sitting there going, wasn't this interesting? And I think what fascinates me was we were just kids getting on with it, and we were all friends. And I think I never felt less than. Nobody ever made me feel less than. And things like that were very, very rare. And, a lot of my friends went to Oxford, they went to Cambridge, they've done really, really well, but they're still my friends. And I think that again gave me a different confidence. And sometimes I look at people, and I've got one friend who's probably the cleverest person I know. I shouldn't name him, he'll be listening. Adam Smith, he works at Oxford University, he's a professor of history. He is, without a shadow of a doubt, the cleverest person I know. And sometimes when I meet people, they're sort of trying to, the bravado of, I'm incredibly intelligent, I just sit there thinking, yeah, you're not as clever as him. And then I just have that. And it kind of, I'd never say that to them, but for me, that helps me deal with people, because I look at them and I just think, yeah, you think you're clever, but I know Adam.
I know, Asha. It's interesting, isn't it? Yeah, well, it's very, very powerful. This idea, a practice that I do with clients a lot is, if you're putting someone on a pedestal, you close your eyes and you literally lift them down in front of you. Just pull them down to eye level, and if you're looking down them, if you're judging them, you just bring them up to eye level. It comes from a Buddhist practice.
Oh,
but
I love that.
It's just lovely, because you can actually feel the energy as you lift someone up, and you realise, well, I've been looking down at you. I've been making a judgment, or I've been worshipping the ground you're walking on. And no, you're just like me in a different way. And
absolutely.
But thank you. Yeah, really powerful stuff. So what brought you then, given the sort of ups and downs around your own education, the ones that really made a difference, took you under their wing, the art teacher, and your upbringing, how did you find your way to being an educator as your life, really?
It was actually a love of my subject. So when I went to university, I studied religion, and I think it's my interest in people. And I'm not particularly a religious person, but I love studying religion. I love what people believe, why people believe, the ethics and the morals around it. And I just wanted to go out into the world and teach people that it's not about differences, it's about what people believe, and it's their belief systems, and this is why people have particular morals, and this is why, studying moral ethics and philosophy absolutely fascinated me. And so when I finished university, I was thinking, this is what I want to do. I want to go and I want to impart my knowledge, but in a way that's not at all religious.
Thank you. So there was just a very small interruption on the Wi-Fi there, but
Sorry.
So yeah, no, it's cool. I just paused just to make sure I hadn't cut you off. But yeah, so it was imparting of knowledge, but yeah. So were you a religious studies teacher then? Was that your
Yeah, that's how I started. And my reasoning behind it was, I want people to understand people. You have to understand where people are coming from, and faith is a big part of that. And you don't have to have a faith, but you can understand that other people do, and you can have a difference. It just doesn't matter. Just understand where they're coming from.
Amazing. And so, and because in the intro you talked about UK, France, UAE. So were you a subject teacher in all of those countries, or by the time you got to UAE, you were sort of management, leadership, etc.?
It's before then. I was management leadership in France, and I have to tell you, you're not allowed to teach religion in school in France.
Oh, okay. Can you tell us a bit more about that?
It's schools in France, unless you go to a particular denomination, it's totally secular. So there's no religious education in secular schools. So there are Catholic schools and Muslim schools in the country, but the parents choose to put them in there because of that particular religion. And in all other schools in France, it has to be totally secular. So yeah, So only in the UK, and I still miss it.
Okay, yeah, I still miss it. So what, working both as a subject teacher and then latterly moving into management leadership, what, tell us some of the things you took out of your career as far as kind of, yeah, what stayed with you as the positives of the system, of the work that gets done by teachers out there, and where you ran into challenges and kind of obstacles along the way.
Think I'm going to be very honest with you. People are just people.
Mm,
And the challenges and the obstacles, it doesn't matter whether I was in the UK, whether I was in France, whether I was in the UAE, the challenges and the benefits are exactly the same. And I also do for COBIST, Council of British International Schools. I work as a lead improvement partner. So I've done, I think I'm on, oh my goodness, what am I on at the minute? My 23rd accreditation visit I'm doing at the moment. I've been all over the world. My current one, I'm working with the school in Japan. I've been to Kazakhstan. I've been to Norway. I've been to Ascension Island, where you can only fly there from RAF Bryce Norton on a flight that goes once a week. The Seychelles, you name it, I've been there, and I am telling you, people are just people.
mm. Yeah, I think you're spot on there.
Yeah.
I guess, yeah, people are people. What comes with that? I mean, it's a great saying, but what does that mean to you?
I think people are looking to be noticed. People want to be seen. And that's something that's really important, particularly when we get busy. And I think children are just the same as the adults as well. I remember one child saying to me so many years ago that he was mortally offended because a teacher didn't know his name. Now, I was thinking, actually, I kind of get that because this teacher teaches about 300 kids and he's not going to know everybody's name. But it really hurt that young boy. And I think adults are the same. We want to be seen, we want to be noticed, we want to be trusted, we want to be doing the right thing. And, schools are, every single job in the world is stressful. Schools are stressful in a different way because the emotional burden that you have that comes with the normal, you've got your job, you plan your lessons, you teach your lessons, you mark your books, you write your reports, that's your job. But what happens on top of that is the extra emotional stresses that you would have of, a child that's going through a trauma at the moment. You might have parents are splitting up. Then you might have a parent coming in and shouting at you, and then you're taking work home with you. And I always say, I had two kids at home. My oldest daughter has ADHD. There were some days that I was coming into work where we'd had a full-blown episode, I'll call it, before I even walked through the door. And I think it's a big burden to carry. And I know that I have friends who work in industry, and they say, if I'm not feeling very well, I go into my office, I close the door, I tell my secretary, I'm busy, don't do any appointments today. I put my head down on the desk and I fall asleep. You can't do that in teaching.
Mm,
So I think that's quite stressful for teachers, I would say. And I think with that is the importance of kindness and understanding that
mm,
that's what's going on in people's lives.
Yeah, thank you, Joanna. I mean, all of what you sort of said there sounds to me, what would be a buzzword of the moment now, but trauma-informed schools and psychological safety and all these things. The fact that you even recognise that stuff might be going on for kids or for teachers sounds. I'm going to be honest with you, it's still pretty out there in the work in some of the schools that we speak to, and
Wow.
it's remarkable. The yeah, I mean, it, it's yeah. I've lost my train of thought there, but I was going somewhere with it.
You've
It's
just blown my mind telling me that, because I just assume everybody's the same, and psychological safety is one of the most important things for me.
absolutely not. I mean, it's sort of even if within corporate world, which was my old background, that's still a fairly new concept now. The idea that people perform at their best when they are seen and heard and when they feel able to make mistakes and able to speak. Certainly, that wasn't the education system I came through, nor the corporate world, which was largely run by people who went through the education system that I went through. So, left the boarding schools and went into business or banks or whatever. And so the corporations, the businesses were basically mini schools. And we know that Parliament is is a boarding school effectively.
yes.
In any of those institutions. So it's to me the concept of psychological safety is new. It existed only for the very sort of privileged, if you like, not privileged in monetary terms, but privileged in where they found themselves in the world. So and kind leadership. I mean, that's your subject, that's your book. When you were on your journey, whether it was England, France, UAE, how much kind leadership did you encounter?
Pretty much the same as what we were just talking about before in terms of teachers. I would say I'll call it 60-40. I think 60% of the leadership that I had was kind, 40% absolutely wasn't. And it's not a fair scale in terms of balance. So even if you've got the 60% of kindness, that 40% can outweigh it in a negative sense. I think sometimes as well people don't understand what kindness is. And I was talking the other day with my husband. One of the kindest leaders that I had was actually not somebody that people would have thought of as being kind, but he was utterly fair and he noticed, but he didn't have a particularly warm manner. And the day that I got my job with him, it was the second job I ever had, and it was really interesting. We talk about unkindness. I thought I looked really smart. I was wearing a trouser suit, totally matching. I'd made a huge effort to look nice. This was a very important interview for me. I went into the bathroom, and a female member of staff who worked in the school, so I didn't work in that school, I was working in a different school. She came in and she went, "Oh, you're not going to get the job." And I said, "Pardon?" And she said, "He doesn't like women in trousers," and then walked out. She actually did me a huge favour because I relaxed then, because I thought, oh, I'm not going to get the job. So I just walked into the interview and went, yeah, blah, 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 blah. So I wasn't stressed at all because some woman in the toilet had told me that I wasn't going to get the job. Anyway, at the end, in the old days in teaching, what they would do is they'd keep you all in the room together, and then they would come in and say, "Chris, come with me." And if it was you going, everyone went, "Oh, he's got the job." But they would make you wait, because then if you said, "No, thanks, I don't want it," they'd come in and get the next person. I mean, how unkind is that? Seriously, this is like 1990s teaching. This is what they used to do. They put all of you in a room together and then took the person out who'd got it. And anyway, I was called out. And I went into this very sort of stern gentleman who said, "I would like to offer you the job. Would you like to accept it?" And I said, "Yes, please." And he said, "And I won't see you in trousers in August. I will see you in a skirt. The only place a woman should wear trousers is when she's up a ladder." And just before I could go, "Excuse me," I wore trousers every day, never said anything. So you can get an idea of my character from that. But then he said to me, and I've never forgotten it, "I want to give you some advice." And I said, "Yes." And he said, "I don't want you to be here in 2 years' time. You're better than this." And I went, "What do you mean don't want to?" And anyway, I accepted the job. In the time that I was in that school, I had 3 internal promotions, 2 that I hadn't even gone for. He came to my office on one day and it was terrible. A member of staff had a heart attack and we had an Ofsted inspection in 2 days' time. And I was teaching in my room. There was this knock on the door and he just went like this and he had to go out. And I went, "Yes." And he said, "I've got some news for you. This gentleman's had a heart attack. I know it's not great timing because we've got Ofsted in 2 days, but you're the only person I trust to take over his job when he's not here. Will you do it?" And I went, "Yes." And he went, "Thank you," and then left. So he wasn't big huggy, "I think you're wonderful, you'd be great." It was very matter of fact. And then eventually I did actually get a promotion in a different school, and I went in and I said to him, "I need to tell you that I've been offered a job and I'm looking for the jobs I've been." And he went, good. And he said, "I don't want you staying in the same school." He said, "You've got a career and I want you to take it." He said, "Don't stay in a school too long. Make sure." And I thought, wow, he wasn't somebody that people would say was kind because he was quite hardline, but he was hardline fair. He treated everybody with the same rule. Didn't matter who you were. And now I look back, people were like, oh, he's so horrible. But actually, he wasn't horrible. He was just enforcing rules that needed to be enforced. And he treated everybody the same.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you for saying that. I think it's it challenges my stuff. My stuff comes up around that because it's kind of compassionate leadership. But there is, there is strong boundaries in compassionate leadership, boundary
Very much
setting,
so.
and principles of fairness and trust, and doing, one of the big things we, Piers Cross designed the compassionate leader pathway course, is you do what you say you're going to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that is just absolutely the heart of it. So I really
Yeah.
hear that coming through from that example you've used. I suppose the stuff that sets me on edge is, women shouldn't wear trousers, and all this sort of stuff. That sort of old school is
He
a
was
bit
an
too close.
elderly
Yeah.
He was an elderly man there, and he'd been through the Second World War. The year that I left, he'd retired, so you can see how old he was. So that's kind of, again, this is my kindness coming out. I looked
Mm,
at him and I just thought, you're very old fashioned, and I'm going to wear trousers every day. And I never said it to him. I
mm.
did wear trousers every day, and he never said anything to me.
No, no, thank you. It's a lovely example. Thank you for the story. What's then, what is kind leadership? If it's not the warm, fuzzier side of things, what is it?
It's exactly what we've just said, really. It fascinates me how much people don't understand about it. And I did the Cobus conference last year, and before the conference, they can ask questions online. So they've got a little app that you can do, and people send questions. And people were asking me things like, "This just tickles me. Is it a woman thing? Is kind leadership a woman thing?" And I'm thinking, I've been treated dreadfully by some women and really well by some men, and vice versa. It's not that. And then the other one was, how can you have accountability and still be kind? And I think for me, kind leadership's a very practical thing. It shows up in small, consistent behaviours that shape the culture of your school, and it's clear communication, exactly what you've just said. Walk the walk instead of just talking the talk. If you say you're going to do something, you follow through, don't leave people guessing, no ambiguity, delivering the truth with honesty, fairness. I've got a real thing about fairness because, and again, a lot of what I've based my book on is things that I've experienced, that I can't cope with, things not being fair, collaborating with people, building people's self-esteem, just noticing people again, everything that we've said. And I think when you talk about it, it sounds wishy-washy, and that's why I created the Chase framework, because it makes it really clear: communication, honesty, accountability, self-esteem, and ego management. Because I think people don't understand that what kind leadership is. And I thought I'm still a teacher, I'm not in the classroom anymore, but I thought, what can I do to help people understand and help them remember what kind leadership is? And I thought, people chase happiness, you could chase kindness. And it just came into my mind. I was driving past a petrol station and I thought, chase, communication, honest, this is everything I've been thinking about. And I actually, I think we were talking about it the other day, initially the S stood for shame,
Mm,
but the publisher suggested that we might like to flick that into a more positive aspect. I've kept shame in there because the shame's important for me. So I've called it self-esteem,
mm,
but
mm,
in there is definitely shame.
That's a great framework. So Chase, just take us through it again.
Communication, and that
Mm,
means communicating with kindness and compassion and clarity.
yeah,
H for honesty.
yeah.
A for accountability. S is self-esteem,
Mm,
and ego management is the E.
wow. That's a great framework. And how many people have you seen? No one's perfect. We often use this thing from Paul
Mm.
Francis, the author Paul Francis, the characteristics of a healthy adult. Once you've read that, there's about 25, 30 of them. When you've read that, you realise you've got some work to do, because I probably ticked 2 out of 25, and I've done a fair amount of personal work. But and I've never met a human being who's ticked more than maybe 5 or 6 of them
Mm.
consistently. So, with Chase, have you seen people out there who live and breathe this, other than yourself?
Yes.
Mm,
I worked with a lady once called Dawn Accurek, and I learned so much from her in terms of particularly accountability. And I credit her with this. I've put it in the book. She gave me this wonderful phrase, which was, not everybody's like you. And that, at the time, I was like, yeah, of course everybody's not like me, because I used to get very frustrated, and I would be saying to her, we need to get this done. I'll give it to everybody and they can have it done by the end of the week. And she'd go, no, they need 3 weeks to do that. And I'd be going, no, they can do it by the end of the week. And she'd say, no, you could do it by the end of the week. Not everybody's like you. Give them 3 weeks because it'll take them. And I was like, no, it's fine. No, not everybody's like you. And that phrase for me, she really embodies, she communicates very well. She's very clear. She's always honest. She tries to build people's self-esteem, and she's got zero ego. Well, she's got a healthy ego as opposed to one that's running wild.
Yeah. Oh, that's lovely. That's a lovely example that, not everyone's like you. I think, at the heart of that is this understanding that we are entirely unique. And because of the way perception and reality work, there is no one reality. There is no truth, if you like. There is only our own perception. So
Definitely.
it's a really, really valuable sort of grounding to go, yeah. Also that thing, kind of, you have no idea what's going on for someone. That sort of foundation at the heart of counselling, person-centered counselling or empathy work or anything like that is, it really helps with judgment. You judge someone to be lazy, to be incompetent, and then the voice that comes up to you have no idea what's going on for them, and that is your language, that is your stuff that you're sort of tipping out, projecting all over them. So I hear that.
Yeah, another one that I say regularly to my team is, it's people's lives. We are dealing with people's lives. Whether you are dealing with a little child, they might have the capacity to cure cancer, but if they leave your classroom unable to read, then we've lost that capacity. This is people's lives we're dealing with. And I remember I got really choked up once because a mum came in. I'll try to put this tactfully. When I first took over the school, it wasn't particularly successful. We're still on a journey, but it was, to quote one of my parents, I inherited a disaster, and that's a direct quote from one of him. And one of the mums came in and she said to me, my children are in your school and I'm begging you, please will you help my children? And she looked at me and she held my hand and she said, I've sold my mother's wedding jewellery to afford to send my children here for one last year. Please will you help me? And I walked out, and in every industry you have some people who care, some people who clock in, clock out, they're not really bothered. And it just touched my heart, because I was thinking, this is somebody's life, selling her grandmother's wedding jewellery, which is her inheritance, to be able to afford to send her child to school, and you don't care? It's people's lives.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah, I mean, there's almost nothing in childhood. There's your sort of parental, your familial connections, and then the second big thing is school, really, because you spend so much of your life there. And it's why we work with so many people who had a tough time at some schools that were not meeting their duty of care. They were abused, they were neglected, at the real extreme end of things, and at the best end of things, they were just overlooked, minimized, not seen and heard, etc. It's why we're called Seen and Heard, because in my belief, young people in our society are not given the status that they deserve, as being far closer to their original selves than we as adults are. I mean, that's what I believe. We come into the world as a sort of 360-degree personality, fully shaped to kind of bring our gift into this world, and then basically chunks are cut off us by the world around us for so long, until we stare into a mirror in our 40s and go, "Who the hell's that?" And it's very sad. It's very, very sad. And so schools can be a part of keeping children's uniqueness intact and nurturing it.
And being happy, and for me it's a huge thing to have a happy school. And my personal children, my own kids, go mad at me because I just don't care. I want the kids to be happy, because I think if you're happy, you're more likely to come to school and you're more likely to learn. So I've done so you'll see my nails. The kids call me Barbie at school, which is better than when I was in France, because there I was called the Wicked Witch, believe it or not, because I wear black all the time. But the kids call me Barbie. And I did an AI assembly where I put a photo of me into AI and made a Barbie and told them that there was a Miss Joanna Barbie. Now, the whole purpose of the assembly was to say to them at the end, this is not real. You need to be really careful at what you're looking at on the internet, because I've told you that this is Miss Joanna Barbie doesn't exist. Well, it went totally over some of their heads, and they keep coming up and going, "Can I buy a Miss Joanna Barbie?" And I'm like, "No." But they call me Barbie, but I just go with it and I laugh. And then we did a talent show, and I said to my SLT, "Right, what are we going to do in the talent show?" And they went, "No, it's for the kids." I said, "I know it's for the kids, but can you imagine how the kids would feel if we got on at the end and did something?" And I said, "And I've got a rule for me. I will not ask a child to do something that I would not do for myself." So PSHE particularly, and teaching religious studies, you're asking children to give of their heart. You're asking them sometimes quite personal questions that they have to answer. You shouldn't do that unless you're actually prepared to answer it yourself. And if your response is, "I'm not prepared to answer that," then you don't do that to children. So we actually got on the stage. They thought I was joking. We did let it go. So I was Elsa, my vice principal was Olaf the Snowman. We did the kids had a great time. And then we did, my kids told me off, and then we did Healthy Eating Day. So I dressed as a banana. I just got a cheap costume as a banana and burst into the pre-KG 3-year-olds and sang Chicken Banana with them. Well, the school did a little video of it, put it on Instagram, and my daughter sent me a message saying, "Mum, will you stop this, please? It's really embarrassing. You've been Barbie, you've been Elsa, now you're a banana on Instagram. It's embarrassing." And I said, "I don't care." That Sunday we had an open day, and I always go. I go to all of the open days. The amount of parents that we had that came to the open day saying, "Please, can my child come to your school next year? You're the banana. I've seen you." And I was like, "Yes, I am." And they went, "Oh, love it. I just want my child to be happy."
Oh, that's powerful. Thank you. Yeah, I mean, that's when I think of my children, that's all I want. But I still feel there is a system geared up here that's not designed to make children happy.
Yeah.
It's a sausage production factory that's designed to create sort of little cookie cutter sausages at the end. For some it will work. Yeah, and others it leaves them behind, you know. So if a school is looking at your Chase framework and is looking at kind leadership, what are some of the things, you know, if they really get into it and implement it, what would you expect to see in that school?
For me, honestly, I'd come to my school anytime. Or if you want to see the impact of it, I'm telling you now, go on our school's Instagram and Facebook, because I started designing this about 2 years ago, and I started writing, and then I'd written a little bit of a draft, and then obviously I actually tested it out at the Cobus conference because I didn't think anybody would be interested. So I'd started writing, I started thinking about it, and I thought nobody's going to care about kind leadership. So I'd done a little thing where I was just going to do a workshop for about 10, 15 people. And I was contacted by Fiona at Cobus, and she said, "Joanna, I'm really sorry, but would you mind if we moved you into a bigger room?" And I said, "Well, yeah, but I need tables." And she said, "No, I'm talking the big room. Can we move you there?" And I said, "Well, you can, but I'm going to have to change my presentation because I can't do the internet." She said, "Yeah, that's fine." There must have been between 200 and 300 people in that room who wanted to hear about kind leadership. So people do care. And then in August, I went for it big style. So we've got posters around the school. I did training with the teachers. Every Friday, I do something called Picnic with the Principal, which is the children get nominated to come by their teachers. It doesn't have to be for work. It can be for being kind, or it can be for being a nice friend or whatever, or helping out. And they come we've got something called a heritage room where we all sit on the floor together, and I just give them some fruit and some juice. And I say to them, "How long have you been at the school? What's your favourite subject? What do you want to do when you leave school?" Because I'm trying to give them ambitions and let them know you can do it. And then I say to them, "What's really good about the school, and what can we do to improve it? What can we do to make it even better?" And then at the end of it, we've got a lady, Ruby, who does a fantastic job on our social media, and she does a little video of them individually. In the last 2, 3, 4 months, I promise that we don't say anything to the children. All she says is, "Why do you love this school? It's kind. Everybody's kind. The teachers are kind. My friends are kind. Miss Joanna's kind." And it's been a real transformation in terms of their language and the impact that it's had on the school.
That's really beautiful. Yeah, what a lovely thing to have. I'm sitting here, racked with parent guilt about what's going on at my children's school, thinking, "Oh my God, poor things." They're just it's not a kind place. There's some good people there, but this is what I come to: is that people are inherently good. Systems and institutions, for me, are inherently not good. There is something about institutional structure that creates sort of corrupts itself, if you like, and then the institution looks after itself rather than the stakeholders, rather than the staff, rather than the young people. You know, a kind school. Then how does an institution? I know it starts at the top, the leadership, model it, vulnerability, fun. Caring about people, listening, all the things you talked about. But yeah, an institution that may be hundreds of years old and have all this stuffy history and all the rest of it, how can they become kind?
Of course they can. Get the
Mm,
chase framework in there, but it doesn't happen overnight, and
mm,
you have to I call it holding a mirror up to myself. I do it every day. I do an ego check at the end of the day, and I sit there and I think about all of the decisions that I've had to make during the day.
mm,
Was that for me? Or was it for the good of the school? We've
mm,
got the chase framework in all sort of staff-based areas. So I have it in my office. We've got it in the meeting room. It's in staff rooms. And it's really interesting because a few of my colleagues around the world have introduced it into there even before the book's been released. That they know me, and I've been speaking to them about it. And I had an email from somebody who I won't name because I haven't asked him if I'm able to. He sent me an email just out of nowhere, and he said, "I don't think you realise the impact that you've had. We've actually introduced it into our SLT meetings, and
mm,
we have it there. And when we're making decisions, we're going, hold on a minute, we're making this decision. Have we communicated? Are we being honest? Are we holding ourselves accountable? Is this going to raise people?" And he said they're actually using the chase framework to go through. And
right.
I would say it creates a habit. And the biggest one for me has to be ego. And
Mm,
I say to people, I am totally open to professional dialogue. I am not right all the time. I am still learning. I'm still a work in progress. I genuinely haven't got a little black book. If you come to me and you say, "Can I just have a word with you, please? I wasn't really very happy about this decision." I'll go, "Oh, okay, tell me why." I'm not taking it personally because I've done my ego check. I've clearly done something wrong, but people feel comfortable enough because they know they can to come and say, "I wasn't happy." Well, tell me why, and we can
mm,
discuss it. And I'll set boundaries and say, "Well, I hear where you're coming from, but it has to happen like this because of this." Simon
mm.
Sinek because of the why.
Yeah, yeah,
Or
yeah.
I'll go, "Do you know what? You are right. You're right."
Mm,
And
mm,
even things like we produce it. It sounds like such a small thing, but the amount of people that don't do this, we set our calendar a whole year in advance. So we sit as a senior leadership team before all of the teachers come back in July, and we say, when are reports due? When are we having parents' evening? When are we going to do this date? When are we going to do that date? And we put them all in the calendar, and we say to people, this is when this is happening. And the impact that that has sounds small, but actually it's huge. So I can tell you, it's my birthday today. So if it was, my husband might have said, "Let's go away for the weekend, the 14th and 15th of March." If my school then turns around the week before, he could have booked it weeks in advance. If the school then says, "We've got a parents' evening and your reports are due on Wednesday," my weekend away is ruined
mm,
because I didn't know that was happening. So what we do is we release the calendar a year in advance, and we say, "I can tell you now, we've got a parents' evening in June. I can tell you it will be on the Tuesday evening." I can't think of the date when it would be, but imagine it's the 5th of
mhm,
June. If it's somebody's birthday on the 6th of June, they've got a choice then. They can go the weekend before, but they'd be silly to because they've got the reports due then, they've got a parents' evening. They know that they can book it for the weekend after. They're free and easy because they've
mm.
finished their reports, they've had their parents' evening, it's done. And I tell people about this and they go, "Oh, no, no, it's not possible." And I'm going, "It is.
Yeah,
It is."
yeah, yeah. Yeah,
And
wow.
it just makes people feel that schools and businesses are dynamic places. And it's exactly what you've just said, Chris. You've hit the nail on the head. It's the systems and the procedures and the policies. If they're running smoothly and you've got chase in place and all of your systems are aligned with that, things happen. Look at what's happening in the world at the moment, or a kid might fall down and break their leg. If all of this is running smoothly, you've got a blip of the kid breaking their leg. You can deal with that because all of this is running smoothly. Or if, I don't know, a member of staff's ill, that's a blip because you've got to cover their classes, but all of this is running smoothly. And if you don't have the systems in place, it's all like this, then it becomes a major drama and people's well-being suffers.
Thank you, Joanna. Yeah, I mean, what I hear at the heart of all of that is you're designing systems and processes with human beings at the heart of them. You're
Everything.
recognizing the impact that parents' evening, staff meetings, reports have on humans. And my other half is a teacher. I see what it's like for her. At the end of summer term or so, she has hundreds and hundreds of reports, and she's absolutely swamped for weeks. And when people drop things on her and the impact that has on her life. So it can be done, but you have to put the human good at the heart of the decision, not the institutional good or the ego stuff, etc. So I really hear that. And as we come to the end of our time together, I could definitely keep going talking about this forever. It's a wonderful subject. And you've done amazing work. So you've got the book, Kind Leadership. You go around the world, talk to schools, support schools to get this implemented. You're running your own school in UAE. Do you mention the school?
It's Wales International School, and I'm going to give you a giggle. It's actually named after Princess Diana.
Is it?
It's Diana, Princess of Wales. Could you get a more compassionate person?
Oh, the Wales International School.
It's a small school with a big name to look up to.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, for anyone out there, school leaders, etc., you can get the book, speak to Joanna, and find out more about this. But what I love, what I'm seeing, is that the world is turning. It is very difficult at the moment. We record this. We're in March 2026. The Middle East, where you're based, is a war zone effectively because of what's happening. But what I see is the death throes, if you like, of a system that is ending. That sort of patriarchal model with the leaders that go with it, the sort of totalitarian command and control leadership, the ego-driven stuff. This, for me, is a death throw of it. And what comes next is the compassionate model, as a more human model. And you are out there on the front lines making this happen. So thank you, Joanna, for your beautiful work and your amazing, powerful book. Is there anything, just as we finish, anything final you'd like to say that you feel hasn't been said, or anything you want to finish on?
No, just for me, I think exactly what you've just said. If there was ever a time that we needed to look at kind leadership, the time is now. And we're all human. We all make mistakes. Just be kind.
Just be kind. What a beautiful way to finish. So thank you so much for everyone who's listening and being with Joanna Povall. The book, in Kind Leadership, her Chase framework. We've talked about it today. There'll be links in the description if you want to get hold of her or the work. But really, the message is kindness. It's putting people at the heart of things. And as you said, people just want to be seen and heard, recognised for who they are. So whatever work you do out there, or wherever you can take that, then that's the invitation. So thank you very much, Joanna.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's been great fun. And thank you for listening. This has been the Seen and Heard podcast. I'm Chris Braitch, been with Joanna Povall, and really look forward to seeing you on the next one. So thank you for your time and energy. Goodbye.